So bonjour everyone. Uh, I'm going to reflect upon some statements that were given to me on anti-racist education. I noticed one of the statements said, I thought I was anti-racist, but I am non-racist because I'm neutral, open-minded, and I don't see color. Now, to me, if you say I don't see color, what you're doing is dehumanizing everyone who is a person of color or an indigenous person. What you're doing is erasing all of their history, all of their culture, everything that they bring with them to this time and this place. And so to me, this is one of the most racist statements that a person can make to say, I don't see color. Obviously, people are colored, and if you don't see color, then you would have to be colorblind. And I don't think that's the case in this statement. The other thing that I want to mention from these statements is talking about promoting equity. And for myself, I still like the term equality, although people tend to equate equality with sameness. We are not the same, but that's how everybody wants equality to be. And unfortunately, we're not a monoculture, and I don't think we can ever be. And again, that's erasing our history and culture and everything who we are if we equate sameness with equality. Equality is giving people the tools that they need to be able to have an equal chance, an equal opportunity to be fully functional in society. And that's a bit different than how people think of it, I think. The other statement I saw, it's talking about systemic racism. And to me, this is really where racism exists, and it's within systems. The biggest system in Canada that promotes racism is the Constitution of Canada, otherwise known as the BNA Act, because in the Constitution, Canada has given to itself sole jurisdiction over Indians and Indian lands. So to me, this is a racist act of government right there. It didn't in any way support the idea of a partnership that treaties were understood by our people. And so when it gave itself jurisdiction over us, and then it defines who we are, and robs our communities completely of funding. If you look at how funding is distributed to provinces, and while we are a federal responsibility, then we do not get funding, even though we are counted in the provincial population. So in Manitoba, for instance, the provincial coffers are topped up by 15% every year because we make up 15% of the population. Yet provinces can't spend the money on us, so everybody gets a bonus, 15% bonus per year. Meanwhile, poverty is perpetuated for First Nations people. Some of the other things that are here, when they talk about being neutral or not acting, by doing nothing, we support injustice. We must speak out. We must act on behalf of those who are being prejudiced against, because if we don't do it, who will? I always remember reading a quote by a philosopher thousands of years ago, when his people were being colonized by Rome. He said, if not me, who? If not now, when? And so I think that this tells us that we have to act, and if not now, when, then we have to act in the present. And we must always speak up and act on behalf of those who injustice is being prevailed upon. Oh, some of the other things that are here, when they talk about all these different forms of racism, but also they're talking about power and privilege. And I want to remind educators that long ago, when I did presentations, I used a game. It's called Star Power. It's so old it uses bingo chips. But you get three groups that where one has power, one thinks it has power, and one doesn't. And the one that has power gets to make the rules, and they inevitably make rules that support keeping themselves in power and keeping everybody else out. And it doesn't matter who ends up in that group. It always happens that way when you play the game. And so life is like that. The game reflects life, where people tend to do that. So when Canada created its constitution, it was keeping the power within the structure that it had previously been in. And so it would be really hard to change that. We may make changes on the outside that are superficial, but we don't often change how power actually flows within a society. And I don't know why that is, but that just seems to be how it is. And they talk here about the importance of language and caution, painting any group with one brush. And I want to say this because maybe the one group is Canada, and because Canada has in place systems that promote prejudice and racism, classism, those things, if we don't stand up against it and we benefit from it, then we're promoting it by our inaction, by our nonverbal communication. We're shouting out to the world that we are doing this and it's okay. So I think we have to look at the systems as much as we have to look at individual cases of prejudice. It says no one is born racist. And also I had noticed somewhere here, there was a comment that if a black child has to suffer, I'm just trying to quote here, if a black child is old enough to experience racism, then a white child is old enough to learn about it. I remember the community that I was born in. A tourist from South Africa came there, and I went to go see who this person was. And he had a daughter who was my age. I think I was 4 or 5 at the time. And his daughter was with him. He was on a hunting excursion or fishing excursion. And they were at the store. So I walked up to them and I said to this little girl, I said, "Hi, my name is Dan. What's your name?" And the dad whipped around and he said in this very stern voice, he said, Victoria, get away from the native, he'll give you something. And I thought, what can I give her? My pockets are empty. I have nothing to offer. But it wasn't what he was talking about. And to me, this was probably an experience with prejudice that stuck in my mind because it was different from my usual everyday experiences. Yet the everyday experiences were created by systemic racism. Where we lived, what we did, the conditions we lived in, all of it was because of the systems in place at the time. And many of those systems are still in place today. So many people are still there. So I'm hoping that when we talk about racism and we talk about anti-racist education, that we look at what are the things that I can do, what are the things that we can do, what are the things that we can support that will help everyone to have a good life. And hopefully that there are ways we can understand that if we have benefited in some way because of the systems that are in place and someone else has had a rough time because of our privilege, then perhaps we need to have less of these things that we enjoy so that others can at least have a meaningful and a good life. I think that that's important. I haven't been able to see some of the videos or presentations that people are talking about here. But they say you're not born a racist. Where does it come from? And I think we learn from our everyday experience something about racism. And so from these everyday experiences, be the media, social media, be the things we experience in our communities, on the streets, in our jobs, in our schools. Somewhere we have to create a path that's going to create equality for everyone, and not sameness again, but equality where everyone can benefit from this beautiful society that we live in and not have to give up who and what they are in order to be here, be present in our current society that we have. I hope that these few words are helpful to all of you. And truly, I think kids really understand if you talk about racism with them and sexism with them. I think they understand. And as I mentioned, that one game, there are many different activities that you can use with children so that they can learn what racism is, what sexism is, what classism is, all of those kinds of things. So I hope your day is going to be productive. I hope that you are going to enjoy the time that you work together. Some of it might be hard learning. I know that I have had some hard learning in my lifetime too. So take it to heart that we will create a better society for our children. Miigwech.